I thought you were stronger.
We are here talking the finale of Season 2, Part 2 of... We open in a red room covered in smoke as we watch these robots get dismantled one by Nolan. Some guards enter the room and start blasting their weapons. They manage to take Nolan out, or at least they think they did, as Nolan's eyes open and he takes them out with ease. As Nolan speaks his first words of Part 2, as the general walks in and is impressed, as he tells him that he's passed his inspections and finally ready for his execution, as they must be at peak form before they're executed. Cut to a random man running as he's trying to hype himself up as we see Mark arriving home after receiving the call from Angstrom in last episode's final scene. As we'll notice that the title card is fully cracked and completely blue. Mark runs inside, ready for a fight, as Angstrom's hands are on his mother's neck, threatening to snap it if he comes any closer. As he mocks Mark about being a potential risk taker as he blocks all signals within the house, including in Mark's earpiece. Angstrom tells Mark that his identity is public in more than half the realities he's exist in, which explains how he knew about Debbie. As Mark is clueless to who this villain is until he shows him what he did to him last time they saw each other, as Mark says,
"I didn't do anything to you. Your machine blew up. You need help. Let me just..."
I had help!
In anger, he throws Debbie and Oliver to the ground and antagonizes Mark to get him as he tries to attack him, but he's not fast enough as he's thrown into another reality. As Mark finds himself in a reality where dinosaurs are able to talk and argue about who's going to eat him before he's taken back into his reality, where Angstrom is holding Oliver as he admires his purple skin. Angstrom tells Mark that he has no intentions of killing them as long as he doesn't determine the only way to hurt Mark is through them, as he tosses Oliver with no regards to him getting hurt as Debbie catches him. As Mark tries to get Angstrom again, but he's tossed into another reality and one that looks quite familiar. As we see an individual with metal arms like Doc Ock as he fights against a person dressed as a spider who has webs coming out of his hands. Now Mark apologizes for knocking out the Doc Ock lookalike as the hero tries to explain he's traveled to different realities before as well, and that he's the good guy as the bad guy grabs Mark and he's brought back home. Now, it was rumored for a long time that we would see a Spider-Man cameo this season because they do have a crossover in the comics. Now, while he's never referred to as Spider-Man, the credits have him under Agent Spider, a persona Peter once had in the comics. As Angstrom brings Mark back, he threatens to send Debbie and Oliver to another reality, one in which they would instantly die as Mark tries to reason with him. Angstrom throws Mark into a portal in disbelief of the idea of him trying to save Mark because he doesn't remember it happening that way, as the memories from his own experiences and others start to come in. He sees the night of the explosion, to seeing the last time he saw his reality's Mark, to another Angstrom witnessing his Mark kill his son right in front of him, to seeing him lose his wife, and more times of Invincible murdering his family or loved ones, but always leaving him alive to witness it. Now, we'll be discussing this later in the breakdown, but I wish there was more scenes sprinkled throughout the season of showing Angstrom going through this pain. As Mark returns and has Angstrom in his grips, but lets him go and tells him that he can take his best shot at him as long as he lets his family go. As we watch Angstrom throw a knife at Debbie and we watch Mark fly through another portal. Now, while Mark is in another familiar location, which seems to be the world of The Walking Dead, which we saw a brief cameo in the post-credit scenes of episode 5, we cut to Debbie, who takes this opportunity to attack Angstrom. As she tries to escape, but he pulls Mark back in and almost crashes into her, but instead gets caught in another portal. As Debbie learns that the other Debbies in the other universes actually join Nolan and Mark in their murdering of millions. But Debbie lets him know that she's the only Debbie that raised Mark to define Nolan and save the world, and points out the differences of the other situations and that he's no killer. As she actually brings up the fact that this reality is where Mark is a true hero and Angstrom is actually the villain. Clearly upset to hear this, we see him slamming Debbie into a table as he screams he's not the villain as he proceeds to break her arm. As we watch Oliver crying in fear as Angstrom grabs him and says,
"I'm going to make your son hurt. I'm gonna make you hurt. I'm even gonna make this child hurt."
Man, I was secretly thinking that what if Oliver's powers came in at this exact moment, even though he wasn't sure how to use them? That would have been a great moment for that character to actually get his lick back on Angstrom. Meanwhile, we cut to Mark, who's talking to these random individuals about him multiverse hopping, as we see familiar places and faces, including Batman, as he continues to go from one portal to another. As Mark surprises Angstrom, who pops his head in one of the portals, and yet again we watch Mark has him in his possession. As he looks over and sees his mom is beaten and has a broken arm, he completely loses it and flies him into the ground, which reminded me so much of the scene of Superman and Man of Steel. As we watch, Angstrom isn't damaged by this, but instead he overpowers Mark and pushes him as he tells him that he's got an upgrade from different doctors across the multiverse. As we watch him beat Mark through different portals into the different multiverses. As Mark finally has had enough of Angstrom threatening his family again and begins to get the literal upper hand, and he tells him how much he's been holding back, that he knows nothing about him, and we see Mark let loose. Filled with anger and frustration, Mark continues to punch Angstrom and not holding back, and he gets him a final blow at killing Angstrom. But more importantly, killing someone for the very first time, as he has no way back home. As we watch, Mark says,
I thought you were stronger.
Now back in the reality, Cecil and the team arrive to take care of Debbie's wounds as she's concerned about Oliver, but also about Mark's location. As we watch Mark trying to reason with himself on why he had to kill Angstrom, Mark admits that he lost control and he wanted to kill him but didn't know if he can do it. Mark is having what I consider to be a mental breakdown as he doesn't know who he is or where he is, as he begins crying, but then it turns into laughs after he realizes,
I kinda won.
Meanwhile, Nolan is getting beaten as he wants to stand on his own 2 feet. As we watch Nolan walk towards his cell, we see Alan's plans are starting to come into fruition as they lock eyes and they see each other, and they begin to speak through Alan's ways of communicating secretly as Alan lets Nolan know that he's here for him. Back with Mark, who's now talking to himself and tries to avoid the fact that he killed someone, he tries to find a way out of this unknown location. As he thinks that maybe Angstrom has something on him that can get him out of here, in comes what appears to be the Guardians from another universe, but also include Knockout and Thorman. As we learn that they're a much older version of the Guardians that we know, as they fill Mark in on what happened because they actually come from his reality but 20 years into the future, where Invincible has been missing. Now luckily enough time has passed that they have invented a time machine, and the missing time of Invincible hasn't been good for their planet. The robot mentions that they can't reveal too much because it can disrupt the time stream. As they open up a portal for Mark to return to his reality, we see Mark is relieved as Robot tells him that he did manage to return at some point, but he wouldn't like who he became. As we watch Mark start to enter the portal, we see Eve confesses her love to him and wishes she had said something sooner, and she wants him to tell present-day Eve how he feels about her. Even if he doesn't love her, tell her how he feels. As he enters, it's revealed that it's not Rudy under the mask, but it's actually Rex, as he tells her,
I suppose you weren't paying attention when we discussed not damaging the time stream.
Shut up, Rex.
As Mark returns and gets a message from Cecil before almost revealing his powers to the public. Now at the Pentagon, he learns that his mom is doing better and Oliver is fine. Mark and Debbie hug as they're happy to see each other, as she asks if this is all over as he begins to cry, as she's acknowledging that he had to kill Angstrom to end this. As Mark tries to get some alone time, he's visited by Cecil as he tells him he crossed a line, and also tells Cecil,
"You're not your dad, Mark."
You weren't there. I lost it. I just lost it. I crossed the line, Cecil, and I...
You didn't cross the line. You kept your mom and your brother safe. End of story.
Now back at the Guardians headquarters, Rudy tries again to convince Amanda that he can fix her, but he does his best at explaining he wants to help, but not in a robot way, as she acknowledges his effort. As they eventually agree to go on another date. As we cut to Immortal, who's at home, we see that he's greeted by Kate. She let him know that she kept this a hidden secret from everyone. As she tells Immortal that she was thinking about becoming someone else, but she didn't because of him, as they embrace each other and all things are forgiven. Now a bit of a random scene here as we cut to the desert where 2 women, one having superpowers, come across a tomb, the same one that we saw back in season 1 in episode 4. As we watch them get trapped inside, and one of them sees their dad's lifeless body, as the mummy arises in disappointment that they're women and not men that he can take control over, but this is interrupted by Mark flying in the sky. Now this mummy seems to be some type of inside joke because I don't know if this mummy is in the comics. Let me know what you all think about that and if you think this mummy will have a bigger role in season 3. As we watch Mark fly in the sky, he's getting flashbacks to the time where he wanted to be just like his dad. We also cut back to the moment where his dad beat him almost to death, as we also see him telling Cecil that he's not his dad, also including the last time that he saw his dad. As we watch Mark fly faster than we ever seen before, as he sees the blood left on his hands from killing Angstrom. As he makes a stop to looking at Amber in the sky, but he avoids her as she looks up to see if he was there. As we cut to Debbie and Mark's house getting remodeled, inside everything looks brand new, but we can see that both Debbie and Mark are broken inside and out, as Debbie just wants to get back to some type of regular routine. Now later that night, we see them having a conversation as she acknowledges that things will never be the same again. As Mark tells his mom that he's quitting school because there's no point. Based on the things he can do, he can't waste his time trying to have a normal life, and he's got to do better at controlling himself, and this is the most important thing he can do. As we end this finale with Mark paying a visit to Eve, Eve tells him that she's always there if he needs her as he puts his hand closer to her and begins to tell her something, but he stops. As she looks at Mark and tells him that he doesn't deserve this as they lean on one another. As our post-credit scenes cut back to the prison where Alan speaks to Nolan about knowing what happened on Threxa and that he's spoken to Mark. Nolan wants Mark to have nothing to do with this as he lets him know that he has to pay for his own crimes. As Nolan says that he's no longer a Viltrumite anymore and regrets the pain and the destruction he caused back on Earth. As Nolan feels that he deserves what's coming to him, but
I think I miss my wife.
Now, while this episode has some great character moments of Mark and seeing everything that he's going through with killing Angstrom and the whole emotional depths that he's going with his mom, I gotta say, I'm a little bit slightly disappointed with this finale. Now, I've always gave this show credit of not only fleshing out its main characters, but also supporting characters, but the biggest issue I have with this finale and this season in general is Angstrom wasn't a fully fledged character, but instead he was just a villain to serve as a plot device for Mark to kill. While we spent the first episode learning a little bit about Angstrom and we had various post-credit scenes checking in with him, this episode gave us a little bit more backstory explaining his pain, but I wish the show would have explained that and really dove deeper into that as the season went through. Versus what we got in this finale, which to me was rushed in having his character arc and not really feeling the depths of the emotion that the character went through. And if I'm also giving some criticism to this finale, I felt the pacing was a little bit off. We had these random tonal issues from the mummy joke that just came out of nowhere. I also felt that the emotional beats with Rudy and Amanda and Immortal and Kate didn't feel as earned as I hope it would have been. So while I might have been slightly disappointed with this finale, I did ultimately still enjoy this second half of season 2 of Invincible. And seeing our characters like Mark, Nolan, Debbie, and many others facing themselves on who they really want to be and can they fix themselves from their past. Which was beautifully handled with Mark going through this season of him not becoming his dad and not becoming the killer, but ultimately being faced to do so and killing Angstrom. Of course, the action is always on point with this show, and I love the character development, but like I said, I just wish that the main villain, Angstrom, wasn't missing for more than half of the season to really make this emotional ending have a payoff. And if I were to compare the previous finales, I still think season 1 has the best finale of this show so far, followed by the part 1 of season 2 finale, then followed by this one. This will end my recap and breakdown of episode 8. If you're interested in seeing my first time watching live reactions to watching the standout moments of this episode, you can find those reactions in the description of this very video. I really appreciate you all watching today's breakdown. If you could, hit the like button, share your thoughts on this episode and this season 2 part 2 as a whole, as well as what you all hope to see in season 3. Also consider sticking around by subscribing to the channel. You all are awesome, stay safe, and I'll catch you all on the next video.